Goodbye, Thomas. Do svidaniya.
Ivan, did you see the sunrise this morning?
Yes? Missed.
Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham, and this is my good time lover, sometimes hugger, sometimes snuggler, Timothy Frankel. What are we talking about today, Timmy?
Well, it sounds like we're talking about Magnum PI and your longtime love affair with Tom.
You know what? I'm out of town and I don't have my mug, but god damn it, this would be perfect if I had timed it where I had my mug right now to do the thing.
Yep.
We're talking about the greatest 80s action shows of all times. And I think we made it pretty easier for our listeners because, and by the way, it's okay, Ty, if we have disagreements, and I think we're going to have two. I can already foresee two, but I think, unless you're a commie, unless you're a Russian socialist, we both can agree that Magnum PI is one of the greatest 80s action movies that ever existed.
Shows. Magnum PI went on for many seasons. It was a gigantic hit. Everybody, literally everybody who was alive in the 80s can hum the theme song to Magnum PI. I can pretty much describe shot by shot the opening credit sequence with the helicopter and the Ferrari and him helping the girl swim, in her little snorkel suit. Everybody watched Magnum PI, and everybody's mom had a secret hard-on for Tom Selleck. Everybody's mom was watching Magnum PI and thinking about Tom when they were sleeping with your dad. Magnum PI was the definition of phenomenon.
The chemistry that he had with TC, with Simon, his buddies, the tension.
The two buddies, those three guys were everybody wanted that friend group.
And everybody had their own talent that they could kind of help him. He relied on people and they kind of helped each other out, And and he was this guy that lived in a pool house and he's drinking his Michelobes and had beautiful women.
And driving that fucking Ferrari.
Driving the Ferrari. He had such style. He was so cool. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to draw my battle line right now. I have a feeling that you and I are going to disagree on this, and I foresee that I think that you were anti Miami Vice.
I wasn't anti-Miami Vice.
When we talked about it last time, I was like, I always talk about how Miami Vice is one of my favorite shows of all time, favorite shows of the 80s. And you were like, I was old enough to think that those guys were douchebags when people dressed like Don Johnson.
They were douchebags. But it's still an amazingly made show. Michael Mann is a fantastic director. The pilot is beautifully shot.
Don Johnson was a douchebag?
100%.
Oh my God. Total.
Joseph,
100% a douchebag.
Nobody pulled the Joseph string in this situation. All right, you're only allowed to. But
he can't help it.
You're only allowed to chime in when you're on my side. Okay, Don Johnson was fucking cool. Okay, he was dressed in Italian clothes. Before they had Italian clothes, he had a cigar boat and a Ferrari on a detective salary. He was
his testosterone,
and he had the coolest Crockett and Tubbs. Man, they were the definition of cool. And that's 10-minute sequence with them riding that Ferrari down with I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh my God!
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, fantastic song, and the look and feel, the way it was shot of Miami Vice was incredibly influential on future TV. Miami Vice was one of those shows that spawned 1,000 knockoff shows because it was such a unique visual style. It was such a unique way to tell a story. It was incredibly influential, and I think it's a very important show. But when I watch it, I just want to beat the shit out of Don Johnson the whole time I'm watching it. I'm just such a douchebag.
Because Scarface wasn't really a big hit. When you think of 80s cocaine culture coming out of Miami at that time,
you think
of Miami Vice. And this was a show as a kid where the subject matter, like these were hard drugs. It was a violent show. There was like drugs and prostitution and like shit that I wasn't seeing on TV anywhere else. Like they were pushing the envelope, pushing the edge.
And cops committing murders. Just straight up committing murders. I remember when there's an episode in the later seasons where the captain,
Edward James
Olmos, thank you, just straight up murders a dude because the guy there's like a legal loophole where the guy's gonna get away and he's on the helicopter and they're leaving and he fucking snipes him. He shoots him with a sniper rifle so that he won't get away. And you're like, the captain just straight up murdered a dude. That was not something you see on TV.
They were all Vietnam vets, and they all had all that brought home with them, and the darkness that they were carrying. And it was so fucking hard. And I would say, like, who was clearly the coolest was Edward James Olmos. Like he had that raspy voice.
Yeah,
the fucking great stash. He was dressed as cool as everybody else, but he was underspoken
and face covered in scars and doesn't give a fuck.
And he was a fucking stone cold killer, man. He would take you out with a sniper rifle. Yep. He was the guy that was like underspoken, quiet, had that raspy voice, smoking, big cigar, scarred face, and his presence just really was the center of that show.
But let me say it this way. This is important. Don Johnson in every scene is trying to radiate, I'm a maverick. I'm uncontrollable. I'm the wild guy, right? You had to have the captain be a character that we understand why these, like, I'm a rebel, I do what I want. They always did what the captain fucking told them to do. Like, he was so unshakably the authority in every scene that he's in. You had to have that. Because if he seemed weak at all, you as the audience, you knew Don Johnson was just going to roll over the top of it. If he had any weakness at all. But in every scene Edward James Olmos is in, he radiates power. He radiates authority. He radiates, don't fuck with me. And so you get why he's the one in charge. You get why he can actually control those guys, even though they're mavericks, they're off the leash, all that. Yeah.
I think Don Johnson was a son of a bitch. Not his character, Crockett. I think Crockett was a son of a bitch. He was an asshole. He he's fresh out of Vietnam. He was a bad alcoholic. He loved his wife, loved his son, and he could not make it work. As much as he wanted to make it work, he could not make it work. He had rage issues. He had trust issues. So a lot of that really resonated within the thing. And like when he trusted, I don't know if it was the pilot, but I know it was in the first season where he trusted this drug mule guy and the guy betrayed him. And he was like, I fucking trusted you. And he loses his shit and he grabs his face and like yanks his face over and everything. Like, I think it was just, it's great storytelling. It's phenomenal storytelling. And I wasn't used to anti-heroes on TV at the time.
And I think he was very much an early TV anti-hero.
Right. And it was just sexy, man. I mean, just Miami and then the sweat and the women, like, Crockett, like the women that he would fall in love with. And it was, for me, do you remember when the sniper shot that lady on the street? And it was like, I've never seen anything like that. Like as a kid, like you're watching this and you're like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Like it was hard edge TV at the time and it felt dangerous. And I loved, and it was on the weekends and I loved staying up late and watching that show. And it felt awesome. It felt dangerous. And it was like, it was the MTV culture before MTV really took off. Like it was like really infusing the music in the show and the look.
It was very flashy. It was music. It was neon. Michael Mann really with the pilot was sort of dialing in that sort of wet street neon look that he became famous for later. So you can see, like it's Michael Mann just coming into the beginning of his power, where he's really developing the visual style that he would become very famous for later. It was a period where you could get away with edgier TV, so they were really taking advantage of that. They were really pushing the envelope of how far you could go with, like you said, with the anti-hero type character, with actually showing drug use on TV, which you never did before that. You never showed drug use, right? Cops never shot guys without justification. The cops always had to be pure. They had to be righteous. Now suddenly we got cops who do shoot people and probably without justification. And, like that, all of that was very new at the time. It felt very edgy.
Well, listen, Ty, you and I are just two peas in a pod, but I thought we were going to disagree on some Miami Vice.
No, you cannot discount the importance of that show.
I'm going to do a hot take on the A-Team.
See, now this is where we will disagree, because I hated the even as a kid, I hated the
dude.
I thought it was so dumb. I thought it was so dumb.
We're agreeing. I thought I was going to have a hot take on it.
Oh, really? I thought you were about to say you liked the A-Team.
Dude, when I was a kid, and look, I didn't miss an episode because it was like, the movie, and I thought Mr. T was cool and everything like that.
Mr. T was very cool.
But when I was a kid and I would tune into the A-Team, when I realized that nobody shot anybody, that nobody was like, and I'm watching Miami Vice on the fucking weekends,
right?
And seeing this, I'm like, I don't understand.
And
like,
dudes are getting smoked every week on
they're
Miami
getting
Vice.
smoked. Fucking Magnum PI is like, have you seen The Sunrise? And he fucking shoots that guy in the face. And like, these are my shows, right? These are like, fuck yeah. And then I tune into the A-Team, and I'm like, Mr. T is what I'm tuning in for. But Murdoch's kind of like, he's not really funny to me. The old guy with the stogie in his mouth is like, he's, but when they get in shootouts, and I was like, wait a minute, like the bullets are hitting the ground, they're hitting the walls, nobody's getting shot. And then it's like, quickly, you're like, there's no stakes in this. There's like, you got all this firepower, all this shooting thing, there's no stakes in it. And, so I didn't miss an episode, back in those days, you watch everything, but it wasn't as fun like, you can't watch Miami Vice and Magnum PI and then tune into the A-Team and like, oh, this is cool. It felt like a cartoon. It felt like I was watching a cartoon.
It felt like a cartoon. And I agree. And I think what happened to me with the A-Team is I was just old enough that I recognized that it was a cartoon. Now, if I'd been a few years younger, I might have been okay with it, but I was just at that point where I was like, oh, I like shows with actual, you mentioned it, stakes. I like shows with actual stakes. I like that things in Miami Vice felt, as you said, dangerous.
Right.
Like people seemed like they could get hurt. And so it added this tension to everything. A-Team never had any tension.
Like what I wanted to talk about on Monday morning after was Miami Vice or Magnum PI or those things. Yep. And, if you wanted to talk about A-Team, like you could talk about, Mr. T and like his fights the fights in the A-Team were like wrestling matches, right? Like they would just like throw them and the camera would follow them and all that shit. So, it didn't work for me.
Mr. T was always throwing people around.
Yeah. Like throwing people. It was like wrestling, like WWF. Like, yeah. So I was not a huge A-Team guy. I did like Simon to Simon. I did too. I like the chemistry between the two.
I don't know if I would consider that really an action show, but I guess it kind of was. But more than that, it was sort of a mystery comedy because they were funny.
Yeah, now
the guys were funny.
But wasn't there like a big controversy episode where one of the Simons was like holding his wife or something over a building, and she was slipping, and he wasn't able to save her? Like she dies, like his slips out of her hand. I remember something like it had like a moment like, oh shit. Like I remember it had a moment like that. But Joseph, what were you saying that's a spinoff from? What is that a spinoff from?
No, when I was doing research, there was a crossover episode with Magnum PI.
I remember that episode. Yeah.
Airwolf was originally conceived by, is it Belisario? During Magnum PI, it was going to be a backdoor pilot episode with the concept of the Airwolf, but it never did happen. But eventually, he did create Airwolf from that idea.
What is a backdoor pilot? I never understood that term.
So a backdoor pilot is, back in those days, is where you test a concept by adding that to a successful show. Or the other way you did it is you released a pilot as a movie of the week, was the other way you do a backdoor pilot. So you make like a 90-minute movie, call it a movie of the week, release it as the movie of the week, and if it gets good enough numbers, it was actually the pilot for a show.
Interesting.
That was one way.
Yeah.
But what Joseph is talking about right now, which is a thing they used to do. So like Laverne and Shirley. Laverne and Shirley was a spinoff from Happy Days, and it started out when Laverne and Shirley showed up on Happy Days. That was the backdoor pilot for Laverne and Shirley. I think actually Mork and Mindy was a spinoff from Happy Days too, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So they would take a known quantity like Happy Days, which had a huge audience and people watched every week without fail. And you would stick some other character in that show for an episode and see if people reacted to that character. And then you would take that character and put them in their own show.
Mm-hmm. I thought a backdoor pilot had a different meaning, but that was,
I bet you did. With that cheap ass of yours.
That was my years in the aviation side of the Navy. No, I'm just kidding. So,
oh, that is funny. That's very funny. As a crash and rescue guy on an aircraft carrier, you had a different meaning for backdoor pilot.
Let's talk about Airwolf. I remember loving the idea of Airwolf. I can remember images of Airwolf, but I couldn't tell you a full episode or a full story.
I watched every episode of Airwolf without fail. And let me tell you when I went all in on Airwolf. And we were talking about this with Miami Vice, that sense of stakes, that sense of edginess, that sense that like there was actual real danger, that it wasn't just the A-Team where everybody's firing on full auto all the time and somehow no one gets hit. The pilot of Airwolf, this super high-tech futuristic helicopter, is designed by this guy who is kind of crazy, and he's designing it for the military, but once it's been built, he steals it. And he's going to fly it off to the Middle East, and then he's going to sell it to the highest bidder in the Middle East. And it's like super high-tech. It's like a stealth helicopter. America knows that if Middle Eastern terrorists get a hold of this helicopter, they can do tons of damage, right? So they hire the guy, Jan Michael Vincent character, to go over there, find the helicopter, track down the guy who's selling it, the guy who stole it, find the helicopter, and he's a pilot. He's like a hotshot pilot. So once he finds it, he's going to steal it back and fly it, get it back to America, right? So that's the idea. But while he's there, he meets this woman who's also a spy, but she's been embedded as a belly dancer. So she's in the bar, she's belly dancing, she's trying to get close to the bad guy so that she can track down where the helicopter is. So she's also like a spy. And Jan Michael Vincent and her have a romance where he kind of falls for her, she falls for him. They have a little bit of a romantic thing going on. And then the end of the episode is the bad guy kidnaps her, takes her out, and is holding her hostage. And you're expecting, okay, well, Jan Michael Vincent's going to get Airwolf. He's going to go rescue her. Nope. Bad guy just shoots her. He just kills her. And you're like, what?
Oh my God.
He just straight up murdered her.
Right.
And then there's the scene where Jan Michael Vincent's in the helicopter. He's stolen it.
Mm-hmm.
The bad guy is there. And they establish early on that the one place that Airwolf isn't armored is the air-to-air refueling nozzle.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's about the size of a silver dollar.
Right.
And that if you could shoot down that, you would blow the helicopter up.
Right.
And then they show the bad guy in an earlier scene. He's practicing shooting silver dollars out of kids' hands.
Right.
As like a trick.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the scene where the bad guy's on the hilltop. He's got this pistol. He's pointing it at Airwolf. Airwolf's sitting there, and you're like, okay, what's going to happen now? And then Jan Michael Vincent loads some missiles up and just blows him up. Like he doesn't even shoot him with the guns of the helicopter. He just blows him up with some missiles. Right. And I'm like, okay, one, the romantic lead girl got murdered by the bad guy. And then Jan Michael Vincent takes revenge by blowing that dude up with missiles.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's an edge here that did not exist in most other TV shows.
So how did an episode work? Like, what was the structure? Like, was it?
It was very formulaic. It was very episodic, like all TV.
Like
at
a
that
bad
time
guy would show up, and then he would have to kill him with the.
So the end of the pilot is Jan Michael Vincent thinks that the government can't be trusted with this much power. Because it's a stealth helicopter, it can't be detected. So he's like, the government will use this to spy on people. They'll use it for bad stuff. But he steals it himself, and he winds up working with this CIA dude, or it's not CIA, but it's like the fake CIA they do in TV shows, who is like, okay, we're not going to come try to steal it back, but whenever we have stuff we need Airwolf for, you're going to do those missions for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it's a cheesy 80s plot, but that's what they wind up with.
Yeah.
So he's got hidden in this mountain there. Nobody can find it. But when the CIA guy calls and says, hey, there's a terrorist with a satellite killing missile and he's going to fire it, we got to go get him. Then the Jan Michael Vincent character and the and his partner would load up an Airwolf, and they would fly over and they would take out the terrorist and blow up. And every episode was basically that.
So when I think about Airwolf, I have images of thinking it was so cool and seeing the helicopter so cool, but I couldn't tell you.
It was the coolest looking helicopter ever.
So
it looked like a shark.
cool, but I couldn't.
Yeah, it looked like a shark.
Remember. I couldn't tell you the plot of any episode. Like I don't remember.
Yeah, every episode is exactly the same. Bad guy has a thing. He's going to use it for something. Only thing that can stop him is Airwolf. Airwolf flies over there and blows the thing up.
Let's see the list again. Do you think it should be in the top 5?
I mean, it was one that I watched every episode. It only lasted 2 or 3 seasons.
Jan had substance problems.
Yeah, Jan Michael Vincent sort of destroyed that show.
Jan Michael Vincent could have been that generation's Knight Rider.
Oh yeah,
that generation's Brad Pitt.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say is I think part of the reason that Airwolf worked so well for me is as a younger kid I had watched Knight Rider.
Yeah,
and I thought Knight Rider was so cool, but Airwolf was Knight Rider but with an edge.
Yeah.
Nobody ever got killed by Knight Rider.
Yeah.
Like no, Knight Rider never killed anybody. Like it would occasionally it would bump somebody and knock them down, but it never ran over people or shot them. With, it had fucking lasers. It never shot anybody with its laser.
How many times did the car roll up on somebody, open his door, and knock them down? Like that was the go-to.
So
move,
many times.
Now.
Yeah. So I liked the idea of man plus technology being a superhero team. I liked that idea. And so that was what Knight Rider was, is he's a guy, but he's got this super high-tech thing, and that because he has it, he's a superhero now. Airwolf was that, but with an edge. Airwolf was like man plus technology as a superhero, but this superhero fucking murders people. Like he's got 6 machine guns and 3 missile pods, and he's about to blow some shit up.
But the thing about Knight Rider is it feels a little bit more convenient, where you're like, you can call your to be able to access that helicopter, you got to go do dailies and workups and get in there and check the engine. Where Knight Rider just like, Kit, come, follow me. Here we go. But Knight Rider is amazing that it works, right? It's amazing that this car almost has a personality. They become friends. It's like a buddy cop movie with Kit.
I think Kit works really well, and mostly it is it's the accent.
Yeah,
it's the guy who did the voice work for Kit did a fantastic job.
Right.
And that little hint of British sardonic humor that always came through from Kit made Kit have a personality.
So here's my thing so I loved Knight Rider. I loved MacGyver. But I could feel the stakes. For me to be top 5, I needed a little bit more edge. I needed to be a little bit more.
That's why for me, Airwolf beats out Knight Rider, because Airwolf had some edge.
Okay, that's
People
fair.
Got killed all the time.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now, the other one that's not on here that Airwolf was basically ripping off was Blue Thunder.
Yeah, Blue Thunder. But that was a movie.
Blue Thunder, which was the other helicopter show.
Yeah, that was a movie though, right? Rob Schneider?
But the movie became a pilot for the TV show.
It did spawn a short-lived TV show.
Yeah, it was like a one-season show.
I remember having that toy. I had the Blue Thunder helicopter.
Did you? Oh, I love that
helicopter.
Yes, I had that helicopter was awesome.
Wasn't there a motorcycle one? A motorcycle?
Yeah, it was
Street Hawk.
Was it Nighthawk?
No, Street Hawk. I think it was Street Hawk.
Street Hawk.
Street Hawk.
Yeah. It was terrible.
But there's a gaping hole in this list, and it's Dukes of Hazzard.
You know what? I wanted to include it because I grew up with it as well.
Right.
But it's I want to say it started in '79, but I would say it was an '80s.
It is an '80s
TV
show.
show.
It is an '80s show.
That is
for
an
sure.
'80s show, hardcore, and this is crazy. I something about the Dukes of Hazzard just caught me hook, line, and center. I fucking love.
Yeah, because you grew up where they were from.
Yeah, Hazard County.
Did you grow up in Hazard County?
Yeah, it was Hazard County. So for me, Dukes of Hazzard's got me in top 5, but Joseph will be upset because the whole setup to this is he wanted us to talk about Fall Guy. No, go ahead. No, we're going to talk about it. We'll talk about Fall Guy.
No. Fall Guy. I loved Fall Guy back then, but rewatchability, I agree. Knight Rider,
Joseph,
MacGyver.
Don't undercut yourself. Right? You brought this premise up because you wanted to talk about Fall Guy because you went and saw
the
Fall
whole
Guy.
reason we're doing this is so you can talk about Fall Guy because you went and saw Fall Guy movie.
No, I just thought it was a timely.
But by the way, I enjoyed Fall Guy. I caught Fall Guy in the rerun part where it would come on after school. And I remember the theme song. The thing that bothered me, and I thought Fall Guy was fun, and Lee Majors was in it. The thing that bothered me a little bit about Fall Guy is all the fight scenes were kind of the same, where they would trade like
they're all the same.
They would trade like
Yep.
and do stuff like that. But yeah, I remember Fall Guy. It was good. I remember it had a badass truck in the opening title sequence, and I love that shit. But it doesn't come close to Dukes of Hazzard.
The thing that always drove me nuts about Fall Guy, and by the way, give it props. Lee Majors, incredibly charismatic actor. I watched $6 Million Man religiously when I was a kid. That was like my favorite show when I was a kid. So I loved me some Lee Majors, and he's very charismatic. And part of the reason Fall Guy works so well is because he's so great. But the thing that frustrated me as a kid watching Fall Guy is I wanted to see him being a stuntman.
Yeah. I did too.
I didn't need him solving crimes.
No.
I didn't need him investigating.
Yeah.
I was like, just stay on the film set. I want to watch him. I wanted to watch a show about a working stuntman and how you do that job.
Like
I wanted to see, like Hooper. I wanted to see a TV show Hooper. I wanted to watch him doing the stunts. I wanted to watch him rigging a stunt and setting it up and how you make sure you don't get hurt. Like, I was fascinated by the filmmaking part of it. When he starts going out and like solving crimes, I didn't give a fuck about any of that. Then it was just knockoff. Like every other show on TV was doing fucking solving crimes. Who cares? I wanted to see him doing some fucking stunts.
I don't think I've seen Hunter or Spencer for Hire.
Oh, see, Hunter
Hunter was terrible.
Oh,
but Hunter was terrible.
Joseph goes, look, this is what's funny.
I was young.
Joseph goes, now
mostly what
Hunter
was
is the
about-
one that I would put, and you go, it's terrible. And he goes, okay.
Mostly what Hunter was about is Fred Dwyer's super tight jeans and his well outlined package. Because Fred Dwyer was a man among men, and he would wear them tight pants, and the women who were watching Hunter, I know what they were watching for. And many of the dudes too, I'm sure. So I'm not saying it was all women, but when you watched Hunter, you were going to see
a package,
some well-outlined package.
A ties package.
That is just what you were going to see.
But
go ahead.
But
I didn't like Hunter. I thought Hunter was very dumb.
What about Spencer for Hire?
Spencer for Hire was great. Spencer for Hire was great. It's a great character. I really like the actor playing Spencer. It was where Hawk. It was where the captain of DSI got his start.
Avery Brooks.
Avery Brooks. He's great as Hawk. Hawk is a great character.
Can I just say that what's really boldly missing from this list, and I love this show and I don't care who knows it, is Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
Scarecrow and Mrs. King. It wasn't really that much of an action show. It was more of like a comedy.
No, it was a straight
like
up. No, it was an action.
Yeah, I know he was a spy and he would run around.
And they were always like escaping danger and being shot at and being trying to be killed.
But talk about low stakes. It was very low stakes.
It was low stakes, but they had great chemistry. It was funny. I really enjoyed it.
And she was so cute.
Yeah, she was so cute.
Oh my God, she is so cute.
Super cute.
She was so cute. Like when I was a kid watching Scarecrow and Mrs. King, I didn't give a fuck about Scarecrow. I was all about Mrs. King.
Yeah, it's funny because like when I think Scarecrow and Mrs. King, like her image is what pops in my head. I do remember what he looked like, but she's the one that pops in my head. And I just love that show. I thought it was cool.
Well, what about that?
Is this Hardcastle McCormick?
Damn right.
Yeah, Hardcastle McCormick. I remember that show.
A show that I only was interested in it because of the car.
So a guy I grew up with, whose name is Mark, his nickname became Skid Mark because not because he had poop in his drawers, but because the main character on Hardcastle McCormick, his name was Mark McCormick, and his nickname when he was his race car driver was Skid. He was Skid Mark McCormick, and because of that, our friend Mark, like from then on, his name was Skid Mark.
So what's our number 5?
He's got to be Dukes of Hazzard,
or Spencer?
Man. Dukes of Hazzard.
I like Spencer for Hire more, but I think Dukes of Hazzard has a more lasting effect on pop culture.
And you know what I loved about Dukes of Hazzard is I loved like the crazy sense of humor of the show. Like Boss Hogg, and like he was always eating chickens. And Roscoe Pico Train.
And who was that? Roscoe Pico Train.
Roscoe Pico Train. And I loved like the freeze frame, and then Waylon Jennings would come up and be like, Now, Bo and Luke Duke got himself in a situation. You know, like all that shit.
Oh, them Duke boys is in a spot of trouble now.
Yeah, it was fucking hilarious. It's like you could never repeat that. Like that was such a time and place and a sense of humor. And I would watch that show, and it just made me laugh. Like Roscoe Pico Train was so funny.
Were you old enough that Daisy was working for you? Because I was the correct age for Daisy.
Oh, Daisy was the nice red cherry on my banana sundae. Anyway, this was a lot of fun.
Anyway,
going down memory lane. We got some Simon and Simon in. Got some Magnum PI, Miami Vice, Dukes of Hazzard. Now, Bo and Luke Duke got themselves in a situation. Roscoe Pico Train.
And Sweet Sweet Daisy.
And Sweet Sweet Daisy. Say goodbye, Ty.
До свидания.